Howdy folks, I am Ben Starr, the ultimate food geek. Welcome back to my messy kitchen, and I am here today with two of my very favorite people in the world that I met through the restaurant where I was co-chef for the last 7.5 years, Chip and Jenni Ferris. And have invited them here today because we're going to do a series on holiday cocktailing, and they happen to be very good at cocktailing.
We are.
Well, consuming. Not so much making.
No, that's not true. I distinctly recall a dinner at your house recently where you made one of the loveliest cocktails that I have ever tasted in my entire life.
That was not Chip making that, though. That was me.
True. Okay, good. Then we're going to have a lot of fun today. All right, let's get started. All right, for the first part of this segment, what we're going to do is infuse some liquors to give them distinctive holiday sort of flavors. Okay. And the first thing that we're going to do is infuse bourbon, in this case, with smoke from cinnamon. Now, you've probably had some smoked, I know you've probably tasted some smoked bourbons before because you're a bourbon guy, right?
Delicious.
Well, those typically are hardwood smokes, and it's very kind of unusual and obscure to think about cinnamon as a smoke to infuse into liquors.
But so festive.
But very festive, and you'll notice, I'll just give you a taste of that smell of that smoke here. It just smells like the holidays, right? It's a beautiful smoke, a fragrant, you know,
very nice
incense sort of smoke.
It's so much better than when you walk into a grocery and they have all that fake cinnamon stuff.
This is very true. The
so
cinnamon brooms.
And much nicer than a cigar,
yes,
in my opinion.
I totally agree. So the flavor of cinnamon smoke actually goes particularly well with any type of aged spirit. So bourbons and rye, any type of whiskey, scotches, especially like aged rums. You know, the really, really dark kind of sweet rums go really well with this this particular flavor. But I'm going to show you how you can infuse any liquor with this particular smoke. So all you need is a jar of liquor, and don't go for the super nice, expensive, fancy stuff. You're going to be basically, I wouldn't say destroying the natural character of the liquor, but we are putting a flavor profile onto it that makes it significantly more prominent than what it is. So don't get out your like best like 40-year scotch to
Probably
do this to you.
Slightly better than Fireball.
Probably slightly better.
Not Pappy Van Winkle.
Not no.
Got it.
No. Do you have any of that?
Have consumed. Do not own.
Oh. Okay, so if you're going to infuse an entire 750 ml jar, get a full quart size, you know, jar to do it in. But since we're just doing a little bit here, I'm using a pint jar.
We're drinking out of the ball jar?
Yes, you're going to drink. Can you handle this much?
Sure.
In how many days?
Okay, so what you want to do really is just make sure you have enough headspace in the jar for the smoke to collect.
Right.
So you can't fill the jar all the way up to the top because you need some room for the smoke, right? Now, you can use a lighter, a candle. I use my kitchen torch because it's more fun. But you want to set...
It is fun.
Yeah, you want to set the cinnamon stick fully on fire till it gets nice and red and glowy at the top. Let it burn for just a little bit. And then what we're going to do is extinguish the flame and place this down into the jar with the lid slightly on top of it to hold in as much of the smoke as possible until we're ready to infuse it. So we'll blow it out. That's when the smoke starts coming out in earnest. And you're just going to kind of hold the jar lid over there as much as you can. And you'll see the smoke beginning to collect in there.
Yeah.
Don't extinguish, don't stick it into the liquor itself. Well, first of all, if you're using a high-proof liquor, it will explode. So don't use a high-proof liquor, nothing more than 40%. And then as that smoke begins to collect in there, just close your jar lid tight. You can see the smoke in there?
Yeah, just a little bit, yeah.
And then you start shaking.
Look at that.
And then you'll see the smoke is gone, and it's been infused in here. Now, you want to do this several times.
Okay.
The number of times you infuse it depends partly on how prominent you want the smoke flavor to be, and also how much you're infusing. If we're infusing a full 750 ml bottle, I may need to do this 5 or 6 times just to get enough for the the flavor to come through.
Right.
And also you have to consider the fact that we're going to be making cocktails with this, so we're going to be diluting it. So the first cocktail we're going to do is a smoked old fashioned, and it's pretty much spirit forward, and we're not adding a lot of liquid to it to dilute it. Right. But the second cocktail we're going to make, we're going to smoke a rum and make a smoked like rum infused apple cider. So we really want to jack the smoke flavor up in the rum so that we can still detect that smoke character after it's diluted. But for this, we're doing a spirit forward drink, so we only need to do this a couple or 3 times until we can kind of get a little bit of that smoke flavor. So now it is your turn next, Chip.
Ooh, fire.
Fire!
Yes.
All right. I think I can handle this. How on fire does it need to be?
It's on fire good.
It's on fire.
So then you're going to blow it out, set it in there,
Don't let it touch
cover
the
with the lid to try to trap as much smoke as you can. Now, as you pull the stick out, don't scrape it along the lid because then you're going to scrape.
You don't want the embers? I think they're
there,
delicious.
So.
Oh, you got a little.
I got a little.
Party foul. That's okay. We can strain it.
A strainer.
Okay. So get that on good and tight and then shake it, shake it.
Oh, it smells so good.
Isn't that smoke delicious? It smells so good. Very good. And then that smoke is actually surprisingly sweet. I've never done that before. Interesting.
Okay, now.
All right.
Now we have to strain it.
We will need to strain it before we make the cocktails, but I think what I'd like to do is let's give it a little taste, because
you can put the ember in my taste.
Yeah, okay. You can't ever tell just from smelling it how prominent the smoke flavor is. So we're going to have our resident bourbon drinker give a sip to that. And think about an embery, nice. Think about an old-fashioned. We want the smoke character to be there, not to be too much.
No, delicious.
Delicious? All right,
I
excellent.
just want to smell it. I'm not drinking.
You want to taste it?
No.
I do. It's fairly it's fairly sterile since it's alcohol. I guess I normally drink slightly better whiskey than this, but it's not bad. And you can definitely detect the smoke character for sure. All right. So this is your method for infusing cinnamon smoke into whatever liquor you want. Now we're going to make some cocktails.
Wonderful.
So, one for each of you.
These are just like mine.
We are going to do 2 ounces. That's a 1 ounce jigger. So if you want to do 2 ounces of our whiskey.
Do you want to strain it? Or?
Yeah, let me grab a little strainer for you.
I mean,
2?
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to get 2 bits of orange peel here and show you another neat little trick we're going to use for garnish. All right, wonderful. Now, typical old-fashioned is slightly sweetened, and the old bartender's trick is to use a sugar cube, but not everybody's got sugar cubes around.
Chip does.
So, well, I would expect that. If you don't have a sugar cube to muddle into your drink, you can dissolve half a teaspoon of sugar in a teaspoon of water, or use an already liquid form of sugar like simple syrup if you keep that, or agave nectar. I'm going to add about a teaspoon of agave nectar, and that just makes it very easy to dissolve. We're going to add in a couple of shakes of bitters, whichever kind you have. I really do like orange bitters in an old-fashioned, so I'm going to do a couple of shakes of orange bitters here. And then we're going to add a little bit of ice. And now we're going to talk about garnish. So I actually like to garnish this with a flaming cinnamon stick.
Oh, nice.
Now there's 2 ways to do this. You can set the cinnamon on fire and then dunk it in there. You do get a few embers, but you also get a last final kind of jolt of that cinnamon flavor when you extinguish the flaming cinnamon stick into the drink. So that's a fun thing to do. But you'll fill the entire room with that beautiful scent if you'll set them on fire, extinguish them, and put them smoldering side up. You just have to be aware that you're not serving these to people who are already 4 or 5 drinks in, because they might like get it up their nose and set their
or use it
on
as a
fire.
straw.
Exactly. All right, so I'm going to set these on fire, just like we did for the infusion. And then we're going to take our orange peels here and just kind of run them through that fire to give a little bit of a singe and really kind of make those oils in the peel become nice and volatile and go crazy. All right, so are y'all brave enough to have the cinnamon out?
Yeah.
Sure. Of course.
Okay. So we're going to do that. And that also, as you enjoy the cocktail, gives you the aroma of the cinnamon smoke in your nose at the same time as you're drinking it. So
cheers.
Oh, cheers.
Where's yours?
Well, I'm letting y'all get drunk, and I'm going to see what happens.
Like I'm so nervous about drinking it. My hair is going to catch on fire.
Yeah, do you have much flammable product in your hair right now?
That's delicious.
Yeah, you like it?
Mm-hmm.
If I liked an old-fashioned.
I'm going to try it a different way here in just a minute.
Oh, no.
That's actually outstanding.
Does it really?
That is really, really good.
You want to try mine?
Try Jenni's.
I'm not a big old-fashioned drinker, so you're...
Hers is not airtight. There's a big hole in it right here.
You could put your finger over that. There you go.
It is actually really nice. All right, so smoked old-fashioned, cheers. All right, next we are going to do a smoked rum drink, right? Now, I've already explained how you do the infusions, and this particular recipe is for a bulk cocktail like you would make for a holiday party. There may not be many holiday parties this year, but...
You can have a party with 2 people.
Well, that's true. That's true.
And it's COVID. You may need to make it in bulk.
That's also true. This makes a large amount, a little over, almost 3 quarts of cocktail. But the cool thing about this, it's a spiced cider cocktail. If you don't finish it, you can just put the rest of it in the fridge. It'll last for weeks at a time, and you can reheat it. Yeah, at least till Christmas or New Year's or beyond. And then you can just reheat it in 1 portion servings, or if you have another party, you can reheat it to finish that out. All right? Perfect. This particular one I'm not going to demonstrate because it's in bulk, and I'm not going to make 3 quarts of cocktail for us to try to drink right now, right? But what you're going to do is take a 750 milliliter bottle. This is a smaller one, clearly. And I prefer the dark rum, but really any type of rum you can use. And then you'll infuse it with your flaming cinnamon stick in a quart jar until the smoke flavor is very prominent. Because we're going to be diluting that spirit, 1 750 ml bottle of rum, to a 2-quart jug of apple cider.
That's a lot. Yes.
Now, go for the good, like, cloudy apple cider that's refrigerated that you find in the produce section. Don't go to, like, the bottled juice section and get the clear apple cider, because that's not real apple cider, right? Get the unfiltered, really, really good pasteurized stuff. 2 quarts apple cider, 1 750 ml bottle of smoked rum. You're going to add the juice of 4 lemons to it to make it nice and bright. And then we're going to add some spices. In this case, about a tablespoon of cinnamon, a teaspoonful of ginger, and a half teaspoon or so of cloves and nutmeg. And the trick to infusing or adding spices to liquid, because they tend to just float on top, is to mix them with a little bit of sugar. So in this case, we're going to do about half a cup of sugar, or a quarter cup of sugar. You don't want to add too much because the apple cider itself is already sweet. And unless you really, really love cloyingly sweet cocktails, you don't want to add too much sweetness. So, quarter cup of sugar mixed in with your spices, mix it all together in a pot, heat it up until it's simmering. And then what I like to do is pour it into a thermos, like that has its own little dispenser, or some sort of insulated serving vessel so that it stays warm and you don't have to keep it, boiling on top of the stove.
It probably smells delicious.
It does smell delicious, but it boils off all of your booze.
Yeah,
that defeats.
So I'm going to give you guys a little sample of this that I mixed up this morning before you arrived.
Ooh, it's toasty.
And who gets the lover glass? Is that Chip?
Sure.
Okay. And Jenny gets the Brazil.
Nice. So, would you garnish this when you serve it?
You could garnish this with a flaming cinnamon stick, would also be very, very nice. Or a little slice of fresh apple would be nice as well. But since it's in a mug, you can't really see the garnish, so it's not quite as special.
Ooh. It's a lot of rum.
Yeah, I might have gone slightly more potent than the 1 750 ml to 2 quarts.
Yeah, that's rum. That's rum. That's correct.
There's a little bit of juice in there.
Cheers. Oh, come on. You're better at this than that.
It was just down the wrong tube.
There's no wrong tube when it comes to smoked rum.
Wow.
That's delicious.
And that, on a cold winter day, will get you drunk really fast.
Yeah.
So carriage ride, perfect accompaniment.
Lovely. Libby, you want
Cheers.
some? Cheers.
Cheers.
Libby, you want some?
All right, next we are going to talk about a second infusion that's really kind of holiday scented and flavored, and that is infusing rosemary into a variety of alcohols. Now, rosemary is most often associated with a clearer sort of an alcohol like gin or vodka, but you can also infuse wines with it. White wine and sparkling wine is actually really beautiful with rosemary. And by the way, don't ever buy rosemary. Like, your neighbor has it growing in their yard if you don't have it growing in the yard. So just take a walk and you'll find rosemary for free.
I did, and the rabbits nested in it.
What's wrong with rabbits?
Puppies go after them.
Oh, yeah. All right, so infusing rosemary into liquor is very simple, but it takes longer. Like that smoke infusion took 5 minutes, right? Infusing rosemary into liquor takes a matter of days, but it's also extremely simple. What you'll do is get yourself a nice 3-4 inch sprig of rosemary like that, and then you're going to want to rub it back and forth in your palms to release those oils, right?
Nice.
And then you're just going to stick it straight down in the bottle, Or you can pour the liquor into a quart jar and do it that way if you want, because once you put this into the bottle, it's hard to remove it from the bottle. And you might want to remove it if you're not going to consume the bottle very quickly, because the longer the rosemary sits into the alcohol, the stronger the rosemary flavor gets. And after about a week of extraction in 40% alcohol like vodka or gin, all you'll be able to taste is like pine trees, like right in your face, right? So it's easy to get a little bit too much rosemary. 7 days is about as long as I'd recommend. So maybe better for you to extract it in a quart jar, and then you can return it to the bottle and write, rosemary infused on it. But you'll close the bottle or the jar, give it a nice shake once or twice a day when you walk past it and think about it, and then typically, you'll start to notice the flavor within the first 24 to 48 hours. But I recommend a minimum of 3 days or a maximum of 7 days. And then you have your beautiful rosemary-infused liquor.
Wonderful.
That's great.
If you're doing this with wine, because wine can oxidize, you don't want to shake it, because shaking it really infuses the oxygen throughout the wine and can give it that vinegary flavor, right? So if you're going to infuse wine, you put the sprig in the bottle, recap the wine, if you've got a vacuum pump even better, and then put it in your fridge and let it sit there for 4 or 5 days, then pop it open and you'll be able to have that beautiful aroma of the wine infused with rosemary. And I know the idea may not initially seem nice, like
weird.
Rosemary and red wine. It's delicious.
This is
And
like mold wine.
we're going to do a rosemary mulled wine as soon as we get done making you a nice gin rosemary cocktail.
There we go.
So let's do that. So 2 ounces of gin.
A bit.
And then 2 ounces of cranberry juice.
Okay.
Now this is 100% juice, but I did not use the pure cranberry juice. If you really love cranberry juice, the intense flavor of that pure 100% cranberry juice, which comes in smaller bottles, can make this cocktail a whole different bear. It'll be much, much more pungent and concentrated. And I really do like that. But in this particular case, that's fine. In this particular case, we're going for a slightly lighter, kind of bubbly, fresh cocktail. Okay, next thing we're going to do is grate some ginger. And my ginger, I learned this from you. I peel it and put it in the freezer so that it's easier to grate. So we're going to do maybe a 1/4 teaspoon, not too much, just a little bit. Gives you that nice, bright, pungent ginger flavor. She just made me a cocktail with ginger and gin that blew my mind. It was so good. All right, wonderful. And then we're going to finish that off with a little bubbles. Topo Chico, club soda, tonic if you want it a little bit sweeter and like that nice kind of bitter tang. Or if you want something extra strong, top it with bubbles, champagne.
Ah.
It'd be beautiful with this cocktail as well. And we are going to garnish with a couple of fresh cranberries, which you can thankfully get this time of year. And then we are also going to do some orange peel here. And if you like the idea of the burnt orange peel, you can hold these over a candle or a lighter to give a little bit of color to the edge, and it gives you some nice, pungent, extra kind of charred flavor from the orange. But in this case, we're just going to put it right there into our cocktail. So,
Very nice.
drink
Wonderful.
up.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh,
Now you're
delicious.
a gin baby,
I
right?
love gin. Oh, yeah.
And gin has juniper berries in it already, which has a slightly similar flavor profile to the rosemary, but the rosemary just gives that extra kind of Christmas tree prominence.
Yes.
And I really just love that rosemary with the cranberry and that little kind of scent of the orange is just a really lovely
It's
combination.
Lovely.
Really, really good.
I could take that.
You like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, the gin is a little subtle,
Oh, good.
and I think the rosemary helped it.
Excellent. All right, final cocktail. It's another bulk party cocktail. And when I think of the holidays, the one cocktail I think of is mulled wine, which
Yes.
really isn't a cocktail, but
Yes.
spiced wine,
Spiced.
warm with a little brandy or some other kind of liquor in there, right?
Yes.
Preferably like silver oak with some brandy.
Sure, if you're on that
Delicious.
sort of a budget.
Delicious. No.
Rosemary can be beautifully infused into any grape-based alcohol. So not only does that mean wines or fortified wines like Marsala or vermouth, but any types of liquor that are distilled from the fermentation of grapes. And that would include brandy, cognac, armagnac, or grappa. And it just so happens that the flavor of mulled wine with that tiny hint of rosemary in the background is just Absolutely delicious. Again, because this is a bulk cocktail recipe, I'm not going to demonstrate the actual mixing of the cocktail because it's super easy, and then we would have to drink the equivalent of like 3 bottles of wine. So, I'm going to tell you how to do it. You're going to start with about a cup of rosemary-infused brandy, or cognac, or Armagnac, right? You're going to mix that with 2 bottles of red wine. Now, you can do the Silver Oak if you're on their budget, or if you're on my budget, just reach for the box. Again, mulled wine, you're heating it up, you're adding spices to it, it's losing all of its character, right?
Yes.
So there is no need in this particular instance to spring for expensive wine. Now, mulled wine originally came from the practice of taking spoiled wine that had basically turned into vinegar and adding sugar and spices to it and heating it up. So mulling wine was a way to hide the fact that the wine had already oxidized or spoiled or gone bad. So there's absolutely no reason at all to spring for the Silver Oak or the Stag's Leap.
What if it's corked?
If it's corked, absolutely.
Perfect.
Then you can serve your mulled Silver Oak to your guests and they will be super impressed. But yeah, just spring for the box or a couple bottles of $4, $5, $6 wine. This recipe is going to hide all of the wine's character to begin with. And in this instance, you do want to add a decent amount of sweetness because the wine itself isn't sweet unless you're starting with sweet wine. And do yourself a favor and don't do that.
Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. That's bad. So you're going to add anywhere from about half a cup to a cup of sugar. Don't worry, you can add more. You can never add less. So start with half of a cup. And again, you're going to mix your spices into that sugar so that evenly distributes throughout the wine as you're heating it. I like to use just a little bit of cinnamon and a little bit of clove. And then one extra trick that I do to amp up the flavor of this is after you've heated this and it's nice and steaming and hot, I like to steep 4 bags of Earl Grey Tea in the wine. And that adds a kind of, Earl Grey has that citrusy flavor from the bergamot oil, and it just adds a nice depth to it, rounds it out. It's really, really, really lovely. So, taste.
Of course.
Yes. And again, you store this in a nice insulated container so you don't lose your heat, but don't have to keep it on the
It
stove.
smells like cloves.
Yeah?
It's delicious.
Definitely makes you think of Christmas time, right?
Indeed.
A little bit, yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
And again, both of these bulk cocktails that you serve warm, they're also totally fine served chilled. But if you don't use them all in one sitting, chill them down, keep them in the fridge, and they're going to last for quite a while. Once you've added liquor to the wine, it becomes more resistant to oxidizing. So it's technically it's not going to go bad on you once you've added the brandy to it. Keep it in the fridge, warm it up when you're ready to use it again. Thank you guys so much for watching. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
Bye.
Cheers.